Good afternoon, everybody. Today I will be presenting my paper on the four tier countries of Asia and the negative effects their educational systems have on the youth. This paper was quite difficult for me to write solely because it required me to research so many different aspects. I needed to create a foundation, so initially I researched all of their educational systems. I was already pretty familiar with Singapore's educational system due to a presentation I had in a previous class, which is kind of what triggered my uh, need to do this paper. And so, with further research, I was able to come to the conclusion that their educational systems are built off of human capital theory and meritocracy. Um, However, I also had to do more research on what necessarily is meritocracy. Does it work? Is it a scam? Um, who really thinks that this works? My second, I guess, angle or research question was, what is human capital theory and how does it affect the educational system? And last but not least, of course, the negative effects that it has on the youth, including higher suicide rates, larger caffeine intakes, and sometimes death, uh, increase in depression and mental illness, lack of intimacy with their family, things like that. I also did a lot of research on the so-called Asian values that we were talking about in class, and how this also plays a part of into their educational system. And what I found was a little disheartening solely because I think in the U.S. we value individualism so much so, and we kind of implement that in our educational system. We tell kids that they can be whatever they want to be as long as they have the heart for it, essentially. But that's not necessarily seen in these countries. The point of human capital theory is that you're essentially compartmentalizing everything about being human, like the human experiencing and working it in a way that will gain economic traction later into the future. You're creating the economy by putting resources into people for later use, kind of like risking money in order to make money. And because of this, schools tend to be quite rigorous. They are extremely competitive. There is so much pressure, not only by, of course, society, but by their parents, their friends, and it's just so much different than what we see in the United States. Uh, it was just quite a big eye opener because I feel like, in a sense, the United States could learn from this. We really could use curriculum reform and kind of learn from other countries around the world, and I think it could be both ways. They could also learn something from Western countries and the need to have kids actually enjoy what they're learning. But that's another paper for another time. The negative effects here were kind of sad. Of course, the increasing suicide rate in these countries is exponential. The government doesn't really seem to be implementing any kind of new policy or kind of changing anything that they're doing because they are seeing results. They create their educational systems in cahoots with their economic goals like 10, 20, 50 years from now because people will either make or break your economy. And that they know this. When all these countries had nothing, they funded education and infrastructure, and that's it. Like, and because of this, it's still like this to this day because it is something that worked for them, kind of like a miracle, right? See, like look at Singapore, they came up so much in such a short amount of time, but the children are not very happy. They're kind of made into what one of the articles said, miniature scholars, and not in a way that is productive for the student. And so, in order to do this paper, I did quite a lot of research. I actually have it all written down here. I started off by reading The Strong State and Curriculum Forum. It is a book of journals by professors around Asia. Some from Singapore, others from South Korea, and each one had a different take, different journals to contribute to the book. The ones that I stuck to were called Western Fragments, Asia as a Method, Culture, Pedagogy, and Equity in a Meritocracy. And this one is by, his name is Dr. Lionel Kim. He is a professor at the University of Singapore. He does a great job of recontextualizing Singaporean education in a way that makes sense for people that did not go to school there. He also focuses a lot on cultural pedagogy and how we can use this to our advantage to possibly create an environment where students will thrive and be happy while still meeting economic goals. The next one I read was called Meritocracy, Policy and Pedagogy, Culture and Politics of Regulation. And the last one I read was called Confucianism, Modernization, and Chinese Pedagogy. She does a great job of kind of incorporating historical aspects to make sense of the current educational background in their country. And then I also read one called Compassion and Competition in Hong Kong Secondary Schools. There were a couple of other articles that I did read solely to build up my knowledge on this topic, and but I don't think I necessarily use them enough to state them here. However, it was different, and I think that in a sense it was sad, but I think we could really learn a lot from here. So much so that I'm probably going to master in educational policy and curriculum reform. That's how much I enjoyed writing this paper. So I'm excited for everyone to read it, and I'm logging off. Thank you.